afternoon. Welcome back. Today the session will be led by Stephen Cull from Samsung, and we're going to give him the opportunity to introduce not only himself, but our esteemed panel here today. Now, the topic of this workshop, Stephen, could you quickly give us a quick synopsis? Why are you excited about this topic? Can you share with everyone what the topic is and what you're excited most about?
Sure. First of all, I'm Steve Cull. I'm from Samsung, Senior Director of Product Management and Head of Product Services and Strategy for Samsung Canada. Our topic today is about cloud. It's about cloud technologies and small business, and it's about the future of technology and where things are going, especially over this pandemic. Over the last 15 months, we've seen massive transformation in the way businesses work, in the way employees work. A lot more requirements on remote working. And what that has done is put a strain on infrastructure and the ability to truly manage your business from in-home. How do you connect everyone? How do you manage bandwidth? How do you ensure you've got security of all the endpoints that are out there in the wild, if you will, trying to connect in? And what do you do with all that data that you're collecting as a result? That is the focus of our topic today. It's about helping small businesses understand the benefits of cloud infrastructure, security, and big data management, and how these things come together and have come together over the last 15 months to truly drive innovation in the marketplace. And innovation is something that Samsung is passionate about, that I'm very passionate about. We focus on innovation with a human at the center. So not just developing new whiz-bang ideas that you could use for a couple of days and put in a drawer. It is human-centric innovation. It is about taking the power of technology and tool sets and enabling you to do more remotely, to do what you can't. In order to achieve this, we focused on an open and secure environment. So open, allowing for the ecosystem to work together and do what it's meant to do, allowing you to leverage the tool sets that make the most sense for your business, and to allow other companies and support services to integrate well with us. At the same time, it's about security. It's about enabling you to be confident in the devices and the endpoints that you have, whether it be a laptop, a tablet, a watch, a phone. These endpoints are out there connecting to your network. You want to make sure that you've got security, that you can control the end-to-end process, and that you've got management tools that allow you to do that. So that's what Samsung is all about. That's why we're excited about this environment. Of course, we work on networks, we work with carriers and retail partners, and we work a lot in the B2B space, enabling companies, small and large and medium, to be able to enable their employees the tool sets they need to accomplish the tasks at hand. And again, in this environment with COVID, I know we're all COVID stressed out. I don't want to use the COVID excuse, but truly we've seen about 5 years of digital transformation across companies take place in the span of 15 months. And what that's done is opened up a number of challenges for businesses to overcome. And I think the esteemed panel we've assembled here today is going to help you and help us truly understand what the power of cloud technology is, how we secure it, and what the fruit, the benefit of the cloud and security come together with big data management. And so with that said, I'm going to move forward and introduce our esteemed colleagues here on the panel, and we'll get this show started. Don't mind the hair. Yes, the barbers are still closed. I'm not as privileged as David. I can't go in my back room and do it myself. Sorry, David, no offense. Your hair looks great. Mine, on the other hand, with the rain and the humidity, it's a bit frizzy. I apologize for that. So let's get started. First up, I'm going to introduce Eric Wan. Eric Wan is from Advanced Analytics Research Lab, an affordable hybrid analytics services solutions provider, consultancy, and education shop. Welcome, Eric. Next is Eric Gales. Yes, there are two Erics on the panel, but we'll be able to keep them straight. Eric Gales is the country manager for AWS Canada. Welcome, Eric. Next up is Chris Fabes. Chris Fabes is the Canadian channel lead for Lenovo. Thank you, Chris. He's the sharpest dressed of the bunch. He's got a suit jacket on. I've not seen a suit jacket in about 15 months. I mean, I've seen a lot of t-shirts. I've seen some muscle tops, which I didn't want to see, but not a suit jacket. So thank you for dressing up and looking fantastic for all of us, putting us all to shame. Next up is Charlie Regan. Charlie Regan is the Capability Expansion Orchestrator. That is a fantastic title. I wish I was an orchestrator, but unfortunately, I don't have that skill set. Welcome. He's from Nerds on Site. He's going to really help us understand the capabilities to support your business where you're at. In addition to Charlie, we've got David Redicott. David Redicott is Secretary, Chief Technology Officer, and Director at Nerds on Site as well. And of course, he's got the sharpest haircut of us all. So thank you, David. And we're looking forward to your comments on the panel. Next up is Arslan Isadaran. I hope I pronounced that right. I've been trying. He's from Rico. Look at him. He's sitting back there, cool, chilled out. He's got the best background. He's got his Rico logo right by his right ear on my screen. So welcome, Arslan, and thank you for participating. Arslan is he's been with 15 years of experience in the IT industry. He's worked closely with groups in other countries to expand Rico's footprint globally. So thank you. I've kind of ad-libbed a little bit here. I apologize for that. I've missed some of the great intros, but I'm sure as our speakers introduce themselves and we'll get into the questions, they're going to add much more context to their skill sets and capabilities than I ever could. Dom Nortera, sorry, Dom, I messed up your name. I apologize for that. But he's got a great set of guitars in the background. I mean, that is the kind of workspace that I want to be in. And that's truly what the cloud technology allows you to do, is to work remotely, work in the space that's most comfortable for you. Okay, well, that's the exciting intros I have for you today. I think the panel here is well prepared to answer a number of questions. How we're going to run this, I have some canned answers on my other computer here that I'm going to read, canned questions that I'm going to read out. We're going to call on each panelist to give us some answers, not the ones that I've got written down, although if they are, that would be fantastic. And then we're going to build into this as a discussion. For the panelists, what I ask is that we respect each other's time and we work in the Canadian style of being democratic and allowing others to have their say. At the end of everyone's piece, if someone has something to add in that we could expand on the topic or something was missed, please feel free to jump in and support. And we'll try not to jump in on everyone because we know how bandwidth works, right? You might be on a time delay, I might be on a time delay. So we want to make sure we give enough space. There will be enough time at the end for the audience to ask questions and hopefully get even more answers. And then we'll do a wrap up. We do have a hard stop today at 4:30, and I will do my best to manage time. I will try not to cut you off, but if you are going on a little bit long and we have to progress the conversation a little bit further, I will simply raise my hand as an indicator as opposed to cutting you off. So that'll give you about 5 seconds to kind of move it along or wrap it up so that we can get to the next question. Everyone good with the rules of engagement? All right, off we go. So first up is, again, a question about cloud, because that's what we're all here for, right? Cloud adoption is a growing trend in Canada, especially during this period of strain and stress and transformation that's taken place, right? And one that certainly has been accelerated. It's been accelerated by COVID. And Eric Gales from AWS, what makes cloud computing appealing for small and medium businesses? And can you share some examples of how AWS is working with Canadian SMEs?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Steve. So yeah, by way of introduction, so my name is Eric Gales. I run the AWS business here in Canada. I have the good fortune to work with many sizes of organizations, from startups to enterprises. And so I have been able to see what the effect of COVID has been on cloud adoption. But I thought I would just start by just sort of reminding everybody a little bit about what cloud computing is. So cloud computing is a new paradigm that really has grown over the course of the last 5 years in particular. And it refers to the on-demand delivery of IT services. So rather than managing your own compute resources on site, you basically just consume them over the internet. And some of the terminology that you might be familiar with associated with cloud computing is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. Those are just 3 levels, if you like, of consumption of IT resources, but they mean the same thing in terms of consumption. So you pay for the resources that you use. AWS is involved in all of those areas, both infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. But what it means is that you just use the resources you need to use. You pay for those resources you need to use. Cloud computing has been adopted by every size and scale of organization. It's been adopted by startups and enterprises, and of course, small and medium businesses. There are really a few key themes that we see as to why people use cloud computing. It's not always the same starting point. There are really sort of 5 key reasons why people move towards using cloud computing. One of them is agility. So this idea that you can just use the resources you need when you need them. And I'm going to come back to that one in particular with the context of COVID. 2 is cost savings. So just paying for what you use. So as opposed to managing and owning infrastructure, which you've typically bought to kind of max your peak use load, if you like, you can just pay for what you're using at the time. And most people's consumption of computing is not uniform throughout the time that they're using it. Elasticity, the availability, the opportunity to scale up your demand and scale down your demand. Of course, this focus on innovation. The market's more competitive than ever. The challenge is more competitive than ever. Being able to focus your resources on innovation as opposed to managing and owning infrastructure is a good thing. And then the other one, which is particularly interesting to small or medium businesses, is this ability to go global much more easily than you used to be able to do in the past, because you can leverage this global infrastructure that exists with a provider like AWS. Now, what we've seen for sure is that COVID has accelerated the adoption of cloud because it really shone a light on these key capabilities. One of the most obvious ones, and Steve, you already touched on this, is just helping people to work remotely. So being able to spin up infrastructure to help customers work remotely. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that one in a second. So I thought I'd give you just 2 other examples just to perhaps sort of set the scene of how cloud computing has been applied to different scenarios. Cloud, the advent of COVID, it created some opportunities for some businesses to grow more quickly. Got an example out of Montreal, a company called Cookit. They sell those componentized cooking boxes that you get delivered to your home. Of course, at the beginning of COVID, demand, they saw a huge spike for that service. They were already running on AWS. And so they were able to grow that to meet the demand of their customers without having to stand up new infrastructure, without having to order in compute resources that they put in a data center and then managed. And so they could respond directly to the increase they saw in demand because they were already using the cloud platform. A different example is a company called Bonlook, which is also a Montreal-based company. They sell eyewear, not unlike, I guess, those beautiful blue glasses you have, Steve. They actually sell through retail stores. Typically, they've got 37 stores in Canada. Of course, when COVID hit, they could no longer leverage those stores in the way that they could before. And so they turned to an e-commerce modality running on the cloud so they could interact with their customers and, of course, continue to service their customers. They actually learned a lot by doing that as they moved through it. And then the final example, I won't name the company, but there are many companies that, of course, were already on the platform whose businesses were negatively hit by COVID. And in those circumstances, if you're carrying the cost of traditional infrastructure, there's not much you can do about it. You're going to carry those costs. But in the cloud, you could scale down your consumption. So there are many companies who are already on the cloud, able to scale down their consumption to ride out the storm, as it were, to get to the other side. So during this pandemic, we've certainly seen a huge uptick in the interest and leverage of cloud computing, and one that we certainly think will endure because many companies have seen the benefits through the lens of what they had to do to meet their initial requirements of dealing with COVID.
Wow, thanks, Eric. I mean, that's true. I mean, it's truly remarkable that takeout food container business just skyrocketed, right? I mean, that, and how you support them in terms of, leveraging the cloud to maximize their opportunity and capitalize when other businesses are really struggling. Does anyone else have any other thoughts on this opening topic, or we'll get to the next one?
I'd love to share if I could, Stephen.
Please.
I love the fact that Eric used some real examples of clients and how they're impacted, and I'd like to do the same. One of our favorite clients that we work with is Canadian Tire, and we work directly with dealers across the country. And of course, when shutdown orders came, their store volume impact was not insignificant. And so moving to curbside orders and phone orders and online orders was key. How do you scale that up, right? And one of the key limitations that was quickly discovered was how many phone lines their PBXs could handle. So we took a cloud hybrid approach. So all cloud is excellent for some solutions, but for stuff that needs on-premise infrastructure, you want to take a hybrid approach. And so the hybrid approach was all inbound and outbound calls that are not store-based should go through a hybrid cloud infrastructure, and everything else should be on premise within the store. And what this facilitated was staff could work from home, and they could clock in doing their time and attendance from home, those that ran office-based positions, while few select retail workers that could handle inventory back and forth at the store could keep their distance, be safe, and still have all their communication work very efficiently, but also scale up. Now they were no longer limited to 4, 8, or 12 phone lines as in traditional PBX days, but they could have as many concurrent calls as they had staff to handle. And now all that needed to happen was someone with a computer, with an internet connection, could take up another channel for a phone call. And so that was another example of where cloud adoption was necessary. And the faster we could do it, the more we were able to enable a store to pump up their volume again, pun intended. Some of you are not old enough to know that song, but
Pump up the volume, pump up the jam, baby.
Okay.
I'm all in. I'm all in to rock jock music. It's excellent.
There you go.
I am no millennial. I wish I was, but no. Thanks a lot, David. This is something, we saw in the McKinsey study, 31% of SMBs have prioritized, remote work and technology as part of their ongoing operations. And an example, kind of links back to both what Eric and what David were saying. And so, how are you enabling skills of your staff to work remotely? What are some of the good resources for SMEs to leverage to ensure they're enabling their staff with the right technology? These are problems and challenges and obstacles that businesses are facing today. And Chris, you've got some great insights on this that you could share with us, right?
I hope so. And I'm probably one of the perfect examples talking about working from home. Steve, you called me out for wearing an actual suit jacket. I've embraced the whole flexible dressing through COVID. So whether it be t-shirts or shorts on the bottom today, we have to recognize, and through COVID, we've done that, recognize the individual using the technology and how they're using their office space. So I'm one of those examples. And if this rings true to anyone else, I've equally gone through raising 3 dogs, 2 kids, and 2 renovations during COVID working from home. And it's a little bit mind-blowing while keeping everything in order. So I'd like to think I'm the example. So if we're talking about how Lenovo has handled work from home or enabling remote workers, I think I'm the example. So if we look at Lenovo as an organization, one of the things that we started to realize, and the reason why I started with that is we've recognized that each individual works differently and has different needs. So understanding that those different needs could be from mental well-being, but also the office space, the technology being used, that's allowed us to have different conversations internally, but also with our customers. And we've become hyper aware that there's a need to bring the human touch to the virtual office. And that's probably the nuance that we're all trying to figure out. And cloud is one of those examples. So I'm glad we started with that conversation. So if we look at some of the small businesses, I think in terms of how we enable, it's not just a conversation about IT, it's a question of guidance. So as we entered COVID, technology, the industry itself, it's always been a fast moving industry. I've always said that I love doing what I do because it's fast paced. I love change. I hate stagnation. But COVID has forced us to go that much faster, and providing guidance for those customers, I think, is important. So it feels like the choices are now endless. They're complex. And we have to particularly figure out what those customer demands are, and then determine what the appetite is and adjust. Something else that we saw is it's gotten that much more complex because other industries that never used to use technology are now using technology. The healthcare industry, the automotive industry, and many others never needed little controllers to make everything they used smart. Now they do. So that's why we've seen missing components, long delivery delays, and we have to figure that out in terms of what's going to be the best point. So from a Lenovo perspective, what we've looked at, we've created a unified company structure. So we recognize that pre-COVID, having separate structures or business units, it didn't allow us to adapt fast enough. So now we're looking at a unified company, and we're looking at a one Lenovo at a global framework. So that allows us to bring the endpoints, and that could be Steve, you mentioned phones, so it could be smartphones, could be notebooks, desktops, workstations, but also the infrastructure and all the services that go around it. So by bringing that together, I believe it allows us to better enable the customers. And we do that whether customers want to work with us direct or through a robust channel network. I think that brings better integration for those customers requiring guidance.
That's excellent, Chris. I mean, yeah, listen, you've got a unique situation there, working through 2 renovations during COVID. I mean, that's a brave soul with kids and a dog. Did I hear that correctly? And a dog?
3 dogs. 3 dogs, and one of those is a puppy, Steve.
Oh my. All right. Does anyone else have 4 dogs? Can we match Chris's? No? All right. So we're going to move on here. I can't top the 4 dogs. I can't top 3 dogs. But you know what Chris is saying really, speaks to what cloud does. And it speaks to, the level of transformation that small, big, medium, all businesses have had to go through. And, according to this McKinsey survey and study that we've seen, companies have accelerated the digitization of their customer supply chain interactions and the internal operations at a rate of 3 to 4 years in such a short period of time. And I'm going to go to Dom here now because he's going to give us some insights about how Dell moved 130,000 employees to work remotely in the span of a snap, right? It was like a blink of an eye. Not the Thanos snap. We don't have that kind of control. But Dom, why don't you give us some insights there?
Right, and given that this topic is on the cloud, we really relied on cloud to make this happen. If you want to move 140,000 people to working remote, you need 3 things. The first is you need capacity, and that's compute, storage, networking. The second one is access to software, applications, resources, tools. And the last one is training, because this is all foreign to a lot of us. As Chris mentioned, each individual works differently. Each individual has a different work environment, and we needed to figure out how to train everybody in a manner that suited them. So from a capacity standpoint, we were in the same boat as everyone else. Everything was constrained. We didn't have the ability to order product and get it delivered quickly as we did in the past. So as a result, instead of building servers and having them shipped out, what we did is we adopted a sort of infrastructure as a service model, Dell being our own cloud provider. And we spun up servers, networking, storage, all the back-end infrastructure required to get all of these people onto the network at the same time. The second thing was access. Again, not everybody at Dell had a laptop. A lot of people had, like very many other companies, had desktops, and we didn't want to have to ship desktops to people's homes. So what we did is we used VM Workspace ONE, which allowed individuals to have access to all of their resources, all of their tools, all of their applications from any device. So good thing is most Dell employees have a PC at home or a tablet. Everyone has a phone. They could stay productive while we got them a notebook. And some of them didn't even want the notebook. They said, we're good. We got access to everything we need. And then the last piece was training. And even there, we used online cloud-based training to get our people up and running. We created a bunch of cloud-based portals for health and wellness, for a bunch of different things that COVID kind of presented to us. Without cloud, we would have been stuck for a while, like many other companies out there. We were fortunate that we had some continuity planning in place, and this really enabled us to get up and running seamlessly.
Well, Dom, I'm having some technology issues here. I think my bandwidth keeps cutting in and out. So if I get lost here, I'll be back. Just pause for me.
Okay.
But truly, not shipping a computer like a workstation to somebody's home is a huge cost savings, right? I mean, and having employees say, "Hey, I'm good. I don't need a laptop. I got a tablet. I got a phone. I got other tools in the house." That is one of the things that cloud technology really enables, right? I mean, it truly gives you the freedom to work anywhere. And we've seen a lot of people leave the city and go to Barrie, go to Hawaii, I even think, St. Bart's became a hot destination to become a new work colony, all remote, of course. And that's all powered through the cloud. there are a lot of benefits that come with cloud technology and with deploying cloud technology. And I think, Arslan, you've got some interesting insights about, some of these cost-related savings and efficiencies that businesses are able to drive as a result of moving in this direction. Why don't you share with us some of those ideas?
Thanks, Stephen. So for those of you not familiar with the Rico IT services business, we specialize in design, implementation, security, and support of IT infrastructure, cloud, and networking systems. And the $1 million question, as I always refer to it, is that gets asked by a lot of our customers is to cloud or not to cloud, and is cloud ultimately the right solution? And the short answer that I always share with every single customer is, at the end of the day, it's all about understanding the business needs and the business goals, because before you start focusing on specific technologies or services, you really want to understand the business vision and where the business is heading long term before picking the right solutions or services that align with those long-term goals. Is the cloud the right approach? In many cases, absolutely yes. And I'll go back to some of the key items that were highlighted at the beginning of the discussion. When it comes to cloud, that increased security or the elasticity that you get from a number of different cloud solutions that are out there is not comparable to something that you can implement in-house or on-prem, especially if you're a small, mid-sized business. But again, it all goes back to really understanding the business vision and the longer-term goal before making the decision if cloud is the right approach for your business.
I'm muting and unmuting, irrespective of what's going on. Sorry about that, Arslan. Thanks. Yeah, no, to cloud or not to cloud, right? To be or not to be. I mean, Shakespeare, if only he had thought of that in the beginning, imagine what his plays would be like. Charlie, I think you've got some interesting insights on this topic as well. So how about you share some of the insights around cost savings and efficiencies that you've seen and helped other companies achieve based on your services?
Sorry, my power's gone out and I'm in and out here, but David is in a much better position to answer that question than I am. Okay? He's the brains of the operation. Let's face it.
Well, with a title like orchestrator, I can see how that works now. You just kind of just magically move it off. All right, David, we'll go to you. And
how easy it is.
I don't know about you guys, but this is the kind of stuff that we have to deal with these days, right? Sorry, wrong camera. Oh, gotta see this here. This is the outage map on Ontario Hydro right now. So poor Charlie and everybody else that's impacted with the extended power outages everywhere, storms going on. But that's one of the realities that we have today. At least we have this kind of information available, right? So when it comes to cost savings, it's all about timeliness of information and how you can utilize that to your competitive advantage. If you're running on a legacy system that takes you hours to get information, as opposed to knowing real time right now, some of our team is down right now because they don't have power. If they don't have electricity, they likely don't have broadband at their home or remote offices. And right, just having that information available makes such a big difference. Sometimes it's about knowing where to get it. And sometimes you are the source of information that needs to make it available to others. So timeliness has a huge impact on anyone's competitiveness. When it comes to cost savings, the other area where you can have savings is if you consolidate your technology in one place. And so a lot of the times it does make sense that you're going to consolidate a bunch of legacy solutions into one channel. And to start and to have that transition happen sometimes is like open heart surgery, right? You don't want the patient to die while they're getting surgery. And so likewise with the business, you don't want the business to die as it's migrating. And so very often you need to have old and new coexisting for a period of time, right? And so it makes most sense to do make that new in another place at the same time. So you're really most of the time you're achieving cost savings because you're actually targeting a whole bunch of arenas all at the same time as you're making the migration. So those are just some of the thoughts off the top of my head.
Thanks, David. Again, my internet cut out there, but I think those are great elements to think about. And again, you're monitoring all the hydro outages. Can you tell me if I'm down or?
It depends. I could zoom in if I knew where you were. But here's the thing. Nowadays, I don't know if the suit that Chris is wearing is real. He might be having a super good green screen and chroma key. In fact, I'm not really sure that those are real guitars behind Dom there. They might just be really good ones, right? But one thing's for sure, the lack of hair, that's real.
Well, there we go. We can count on some things. And you know, this idea about cloud technology and how it's transforming businesses, it also brings with it some risk, right? There's a whole security element that goes into enabling a workforce to access remote, especially when they're digging into your internal systems and they're accessing data points, you know, through a variety of different tool sets. As Dom shared, right? Some of the employees didn't want a PC, they didn't want an image device. You know, are we accessing through VPN, and how are we using VDI and other solutions? You know, and so this is an important element to consider on the path to cloud or not to cloud. And so let's turn our attention now to think about security in this new remote working environment through the power of cloud. And to help us get there, Arslan, to cloud or not to cloud, is going to give us some insights. So, Arslan.
So thanks for that. I think, you know, when it comes to cloud, security is always something to keep in mind. And, you know, I like to sort of use the analogy we use with a lot of our customers. You know, a lot of clients always ask us, is the cloud secure? Do I need to worry about cloud security? And the analogy I use is using the cloud is like living in a gated community. There's a certain amount of investments made by, you know, the organization that provides the security around your community. And you know, you have a certain level of assurance that, you know, where you're ultimately living is secure. But it is still required from you to make certain investments to secure your own property, whether that's adding, you know, a home monitoring system or, you know, security cameras. So, and that analogy is what I use when it comes to using cloud services as well. The cloud providers all provide a fantastic layer of security around the solutions that they're providing. But as the user or as a consumer, you still need to make certain investments on how you protect your own on-prem infrastructure and how you ultimately secure the data transfer between your own devices and the cloud provider. And that's where I think that analogy really sort of hits home and paints a good picture for our customers.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a key one, right? I mean, again, we only have to think a little bit about the news articles and TV stories about ransomware and being you know, held hostage, your data, your infrastructure, your entire company being held hostage based on others' attacks. Or it's gone way beyond phishing schemes and other elements now. And Eric Gales, you can provide us a little bit more on just how secure is the cloud, and is this something that we really should be focusing on?
Yeah, I think, Arslan, I hadn't heard that analogy before, but I think that's a good analogy. I think your analogy of sort of the gated community, which is, if I just take sort of AWS as an example, for us, job zero is security. So it's the security of the infrastructure, the environment. And there is a shared responsibility with the users of that environment, because of course, just like with your home, you can have, you know, lock bolts. If you leave them all unlocked, then someone can still enter your house. And so there is a shared responsibility model, but the level of investment and focus on securing that core infrastructure goes way beyond typically what any small business can, of course, do, or any actually large business for that matter. But it's not just that, but it's also the tools available. So, you know, obviously one of the key ways of securing your environment now is to encrypt your data. Again, sort of in an on-premise environment, that's typically additional software that you layer on and have to pay for and manage. Those kind of features are available as core to the infrastructure itself. And so making it possible for companies to take advantage of very high level security features which are available within the platform, that's available to every customer. And so if you're using the security features as a small business of AWS with a partner or with an application, that's the same capability that some of the largest banks or governments that are using. It's not different. It's not some second rate set of features for small businesses. It's the same infrastructure, it's the same tooling. And so you get access to a set of resources that typically would be beyond the scope of someone deploying on-prem, those capabilities. And so that's something that comes with moving to the cloud, is that level of capability.
Thanks, Eric. And David, I'm going to go to you next, because I mean, it's great. You know, you've got a solid cloud provider with built-in security. You've got this whole gated community concept. You know, how do you bring this together? How do small businesses get started? What's the framework they got to go through in the mindset to really drive not just cloud execution, but the security backbone that all companies want to have?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we need to almost take a step back here and recognize that the dynamic and the motivations with companies today tends to be around a very visible, a very tangible result, a service delivery. So the value exchange is very clear. When it comes to security, that clarity is gone. At best, you've got this grayish cloud of, you know, how you handle security, right? And so I love this analogy of gated community. And to use that analogy, what is very easy to do is for the gated community entrant to have a hidden Trojan horse inside of a trunk of every car. And so what happens is the car is authorized, the gate is open, it goes inside. And then now that the thief is on the inside, there's nothing that keeps a thief from leaving with data, because when you leave a gated community, it always opens up the gate automatically, right? And so I love that analogy 100%, because it so clearly articulates one of the core weaknesses that we have in all of the internet. I recently saw a headline that someone wrote, "The problem is not the ransomware." And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And it's true. Ransomware isn't the problem. The problem is actually a couple of layers underneath, right? The problem is that we're not doing anything about the fact that our systems, whether they're on premise or in the cloud, have by default, this is a default setting, by default, our systems are not prevented from leaving the gated community. So all an attacker has to do is find a way to land inside of the holy grail of the gated community, and then now he can extract, he can steal, and nobody is the wiser for the data being stolen. And so our approach there is basically this approach of don't talk to strangers. When you are inside a gated community, you now treat that gated community with the same inspection, in fact, even stronger about anything that's leaving, right? And so that is what we have historically seen is the number one approach to basically annihilate all modern day threats that are all about exfiltrating data or about having command and control that's done remotely. Just shut that down completely. Why does my computer need to talk to China? There's good business in China. Why does it need to talk to Russia? There's legitimate business in Russia, but I use those two names because we most typically associate those countries as where bad actors originate from. But the reality is a lot of the times those bad actors are in our backyard and they're still strangers, right? So we got to be super careful about what we allow our systems to do in terms of talking outbound.
Thank you, David. So, sorry, go ahead, Eric.
I probably just need to layer one extra thing on here, just building on David's point, because I think he's just highlighted where the gated community does break a little bit, which is imagine, you know, in the cloud, take the AWS cloud, it's a gated community per customer, that there's sort of no concept of you break into the community and you can get access to everybody. Like it's around every customer. And then I think, but the point that Dave's making is there are, again, lots of capabilities within the environment to do things you typically can't do, or are very difficult to do, but expensive to do on-prem, which is to have controls or triggers in place so you can see what the behavior is. So Dave gave a great example there. If your environment is talking to a country that you think, well, I don't have any customers there, then those are the kind of things that can be triggered using tools within the environment in a way that you typically can't do on-prem. And so I think if we sort of park the analogy to say the gated community is really per customer, but within that, you can then instrument that to provide an extra level of security because you can see the behavior of things by using tools and processes that you otherwise couldn't on-prem. I think that's important to make that distinction for the folks that are listening.
Oh, very important, Eric. And in fact, this conversation about the gated community is really resonated with our audience today. And so Arslan, perhaps you can give a little bit more of a deeper understanding as to what the exact point in terms of your driving home with the gated community, just to help those who may not be as familiar. If you could just shed a little bit deeper insight.
Sure, sounds good. And I think Eric somewhat touched base on this, but when we're talking about gated community and why we use that analogy is because when it comes to cloud solutions provided with some of the big names like AWS, for example, they make certain investments in security solutions that a small or mid-sized organization is never going to be able to make for an on-prem infrastructure, or at times it doesn't even make sense to make that kind of investment. And then by rolling out some of these larger investments, not only you're securing your environment, but many of the others that they're also hosting as well. So it really allows you as a small or mid-sized business owner to really focus on that additional security that's only required for your business. So by being part of a larger community, you're taking advantage of some broader solutions that protect you from a security standpoint, for example, or give you that elasticity to up and down the services that you require, but also allow you to invest in some of the smaller solutions that are more focused on your specific business needs.
Thanks, Arslan. Sorry, Chris, Dom, Eric, security is such an important thing. Do you have anything else you'd like to add on here before we jump to the next big topic, which is, of course, that buzzword, big data?
Steve, if you don't mind, we've done a great job, I think, talking about the cloud, and we can't forget that the cloud is communicating with the user and the device that is sitting in the office space or the home office. And I think we've all experienced coming into a Zoom session or a team session or any other webinar that you choose, and you go, who's that person in the room named Tanya, for example? And you hear this guy, Mark, in the background say, my wife had my tablet or whatever it is. So we're allowing for these rogue pieces of technology that need to be secured. So it is important that we look at cloud. We look also at the user and the devices that are connecting to. And it's important to weave all those, I guess, components within the security fabric together.
I agree. Those endpoints are really the most dangerous, right? Sorry, Dom, you want to add in?
I was just going to reinforce what Chris just said there. 93% of breaches happen at the endpoint, right? And we often focus on the data center, but it's just as important to make sure that we pay some attention to figuring out how we address any potential breach at the endpoint, because as much governance as there is in a data center, governance at the individual level, unfortunately, is not what we'd like it to be. And people do their own thing, always feel they're not vulnerable. It's the other guy. So I'm going to do what I need to do. So that's some food for thought. Let's make sure we have a comprehensive security strategy when we put one into place.
The weakest link is always the end user. Am I correct? Like that's I just gave my daughter my phone to use for a few minutes. She downloaded I don't know what, and now everything is locked. What am I going to do? The end user is the weak point, and that's why security isn't just about inside. It's about every element that goes on. In Samsung, of course, we use Knox as our security platform, right from the chipset right up to the app layer to ensure that our devices are secured. But security, cloud, it's all about remote working. What are we working on? What are we working with? It's about big data, right? It's about data. It's about the inner workings of what companies are driving towards today. There's been lots in the news over the last little bit about data and data mining and data management from large companies like Google and Apple and Facebook and others in terms of what they're doing with your personal data. But what about your corporate data? How are you managing that, and how are you getting the best out of those resources that are available and enabling your staff, your employees, your company to truly maximize the value of the data that you have to drive efficiencies throughout your business? So I'm going to go to Eric. Eric, what is really driving the creation of big data? And help me understand, what is it? I hear it all the time, but I just don't get it.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So when it comes to big data, I think one big question is, what is big and what is small, right? That's obviously very different depending on who you talk to and the problem set you're working with. There's a technical definition. There's what I like to say, sort of non-technical and business definition. So on the technical side, we're thinking about things like the 4 V's of big data. volume, variety, velocity, and veracity. So how big the data is, volume, variety, how diverse it is, velocity, how frequent and how fast the data comes in, and veracity, which has more to do with quality. But I think for the audience here, maybe more sort of business and non-technical, the term I like to sort of describe this as has more to do with the fact that big data are the data that you have to deliberately think and plan for when you are collecting, reporting, using the data. And very, very loosely speaking, I would even say for more traditional business owners and as SMEs, big data are data that you can just pull and analyze on your Excel sheet or store it on your Excel sheet. And that could potentially goes into anything over 2 gigabytes. You're going to have a hard time analyzing and graphing it on Excel. You have to use a database, you have to use specialized programs, and you have to have specialized skills for it. And to your other question, where does it come from? I think it really boils down to one thing, which is the digitization of everything. So now we have transactions being digitized, customer information, marketing, social media, and all of that stuff. And to give some more specific examples, for example, manufacturing, we have machine getting real-time data from IoT devices. We have e-commerce distribution getting information, whether it's in marketing, website, or inventory. And even a restaurant or a bakery shop, you might have little silos of smaller data sets. Your customer list might be a few thousand people, inventory operations, HR scheduling, costs. But if you're able to bring it all together into a management system, then that gets more complicated and there's a lot more variety and time matching you have to do.
Thanks, Eric. So big data is really big. And again, that's really where the cloud comes in, right? Because you're not going to have these tool sets, especially in a small, medium enterprise. You need access to quality tool sets that are remote and can be, accessed from anywhere. And the cloud enables you to do that in the most efficient way to process all of that. Again, running applications throughout your network can be very costly if you're not careful and IT resource properly. But most times when people think about big data, they're thinking about large enterprises. They're thinking about the big behemoths out there. But how can we as small businesses, small, medium enterprises, how do we leverage big data to share with our audience?
Did we lose you for a second there?
Oh, I got
Stephen for a bit. You're back.
I'm back. Okay, I'm going to assume you got 90% of what I said. There were no real jokes in there, but I'm going to go to Dom and ask Dom, how do small, medium enterprises leverage big data in the same way that most enterprises do?
Right, and there is a misconception, big data equals big business. And there are some instances where the investment needs to be made, and it's usually a moderate investment versus the gains that a small and medium business will see. And I have a good example for you. There's a small zoo in the northwest of the US, and they discovered big data to solve a bunch of problems. But one was pretty interesting in particular. They were trying to determine their traffic because they needed to understand how to staff, when to buy concessions, things along those lines. And, typically you look at the weather and say, okay, on sunny days, we're going to have better traffic than on rainy days, and cold months, we're going to have less traffic than on warmer months. But what they were discovering is that they had instances where it was sunny and their traffic was not so great, and other instances where it was cloudy, almost threatening rain, and they were really busy and weren't staffed accordingly. They have gate data, right, through the POS system and whatnot, and they didn't know what to do with it. They brought on this small analytics firm that took that data and basically turned it into insights. And one of the insights that they gained was that people don't make decisions to go to the zoo based on today's weather. They make a decision to go to the zoo based on the forecast's weather. So if it's a Tuesday, for example, and you say, hey, let's go to the zoo on Saturday, and then Saturday, you look at the forecast and it says it's going to rain. okay, let's change our plans. Let's go do something inside instead. Saturday rolls around, it's sunny. Well, guess what? These individuals made alternate plans, so they're not going to the zoo. And that's why on really sunny days, traffic wasn't so great, because originally the forecast said it was going to be rainy that day, and vice versa. Days that said it was going to be sunny turned out to be overcast, and those people already had made plans to go to the zoo. So they use something like this to staff accordingly. They use social media to do some flash sales when they knew, the weather said it was going to rain, it's going to be sunny. Let's see how we can drive more people to the zoo on a Thursday or Friday night. Say, hey, guess what? It's going to be sunny on Saturday. Come on. And they targeted their members, and they targeted anyone who signed up for social media. So again, that's one aspect where they were able to cut costs through staffing properly when they did know that traffic was going to be light. And they increased their gate attendance based on some flash marketing, again, because big data, the insights they got from that showed them that there was more opportunity than they thought there was.
Well, thanks, Tom. So if I could translate this a little bit from my own understanding, like there's big data is the accumulation of stuff, but it truly comes down to the insights that allows you to optimize and drive your business forward. And Eric, you have a lot of experience in the optimization and insights in terms of driving big data to be useful, correct?
Which Eric? Sorry.
Well, I'm either way. You could go either way. I mean, I know AWS. I know Eric Gales has got some points to put on here, but I thought as we're talking about insights, and Eric, you're in the analytics lab, you guys are driving insights out of big data all the time, right? So before we go to Eric Gales and AWS to provide some more thoughts, I just thought you could pick up on Dom's, insights-driven comment there and help our esteemed audience gain more leverage out of big data.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe just a bit of background. So, we run an analytics services and solutions company. So really all we do is partner with organizations, big or small, partnering with them to help them drive their analytics capabilities forward, whether it is, back-end data engineering to, more data analysis and driving insights through strategic decisions. So on the sort of more formalizing, how do you take advantage of data and insights? I think really two big things. One is driving continuous improvement and through big data. So whether, which department you're in, whether if you're in marketing or management or operations, you have a set of important activities that you have to have KPIs for. You got to track it, you got to analyze it, and you got to use the insights for continuous improvement. And what we often see also is that a lot of organizations are trying to revolutionize their processes. And if I could also add, the way we look at organization can drive value from data and analytics, I look at two spectrum. One is defensive and offensive data strategies. So in defensive, you're more looking at security, privacy, regulatory things. In offensive, you're actively trying to find value in your data to trying to drive decision-making and things like that. And the second thing is, second spectrum is whether you're passive or active. So data, if it's just sitting there, you can look it up. It's like a library of information. You can look up your customers, you can look up, what transactions and which orders are lost. So that's more passive. Well, there are a lot of organizations that's more active, where you're actively mining your data, trying to drive insights from it and trying to have, become a data-driven organization. And I will argue, a lot of organizations in Canada are probably too passive and too defensive compared to our international peers. So we're really trying to work with organizations to become more offensive on the strategy side and more active on the data analytics strategy side.
I guess, cloud and security really come into play, and the more we can convince businesses that cloud is the best way to manage such large forms of data, and the security that's available with this gated community concept is really going to enable you to maximize your efficiency without putting your business at risk, the better we're going to be. And Eric, maybe you can.
We lost Steve again. but
Another
I think
joke
he was
that we
gonna say-
missed. Oh my goodness.
I think
We're
it's
gonna have to have
maybe
a-
you can chime in.
I think I know where he was gonna go. Yeah. So obviously, in order to maximize the potential of your data, you need somewhere to put it that's low cost, and you need access to tools to actually exploit it. I think the point that the other Eric was making about over time, everything's getting digitized. So whatever business you're in, you will find, whether it's tools and equipment or whether it's people and behaviors and selling things, all of that's getting digitized. It's creating lots of data. Sometimes you can believe that there is value in that data, but you don't know unless you try it. And so that's another benefit of the cloud. You can spin something up, you can see whether there are patterns in your data that you could reuse. And if there are, you can continue. And if not, you can basically shut that down. You didn't invest a bunch of capital in buying a bunch of gear to do something. The other thing is that there are lots of data sources you can combine your data with. So in the case of AWS, for example, there's a service called Data Exchange, where lots of providers provide data which is available for you to combine with your data. That could be weather data, consumer and retail data, financial services data, which is made available by data providers that you can combine with your data. And that may enhance your ability to see insights, get some behavioral dynamics from your customers by combining those things. But the cloud is a great place to experiment, where you can put data in, you can then apply those tools to it, see if you get value. If you do, you can scale it up. If not, you can scale it back down. And so the cloud provides a great platform for you to experiment with data. And then within the cloud itself, there are models that you can apply to your data. So big data is often sort of put in the same category as machine learning. Machine learning about applying compute learning to your data to see if you can see patterns based on historical data that you then project forward, like forecasting, for example, or fraud detection. And so lots of that capability is native to the cloud. There are native services available to apply to your data that enable you to move very quickly to translate the data that you have into actions that you can take to enhance your business. And so great place to experiment with this construct, using the cloud against your data, and something that if you get value, you can continue. If you don't get value, then you can turn it off and scale it back down in a way that you typically can't do on-prem.
Thanks, Eric. I think I'm back now. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not, but I'm having some bandwidth issues. It is the remote challenges that come up. But I do appreciate you jumping in and shedding more light on the data scenario. So
We
at this
probably have a
point-
nerd in your neighborhood, Stephen.
Someone is sucking my bandwidth. I hope it's not my daughter playing Fortnite or Minecraft and watching YouTube videos at the same time. That often happens around this time. School
And
is
we have
now
a
out.
product. We have a product that will throttle that control system for you as well.
I got to get some of that, Charlie. That's for sure. So what I'm going to do now, just because we're at the 4 o'clock hour, I want to make sure that the audience who's been taking in and absorbing all the information we've been sharing has the opportunity to ask some questions. But just before we go to Q&A, I'd like to give everyone one last chance to add in any comments or insights around cloud security or big data. I'm going to pose this one question, and then we'll do not so much a free-for-all, but whoever jumps first, then I'll go to the next person, and so on and so forth, around my wheel of pictures on my screen. So here's the question. What other ways can small, medium enterprises drive business and organizational value from cloud and big data technologies? And how does big data enhance marketing strategies? So it's a varied question. It goes in a lot of ways. And I think this is a nice, juicy one that everyone can have your own spin on. And if you want to go more on the security front, or you want to go more on the big data front, or you want to focus on the core of the cloud, please feel free. But as I go roulette of pictures, I'm going to start with you, Chris, because you got such a sharp suit on. Look at that.
Hey, thanks, Steve. So I'm not sure if I'll get all that specific, because I think if I was a small business listening in and I tried to piece together everything we're talking about, whether it be cloud, security, remote workforce, what's important to know is not to be scared that bigger businesses can take advantage of these companies better than you can. The fact that we have cloud, that allows for speed, that allows for access for companies of any size, so as well as big data. So if you look at the benefits for a small business, if you're getting insights, if you're getting direction in terms of how to make decisions for your business, it allows these small businesses to be agile and competitive with perhaps larger companies or companies similar to them at speed and that can scale. And I think that's the virtue of what we're talking about today and the value that it has for small businesses.
Yeah, Chris, that's excellent. I mean, speed and scale is definitely, kind of the core. Charlie, as the orchestrator, do you want to go next and add your comments, or do you want to orchestrate it over to David to give us the answer?
That's very good, Stephen. No, I'll throw in my 2 cents worth here. To be perfectly honest, Chris makes incredibly good points that there are SMEs out there that are unaware that they could take advantage of some tools that would help them specifically in marketing. Most SMEs are committed to the disciplines of number 1, driving up revenues, number 2, driving down costs, number 3, driving up productivity and profitability, and number 4, saving time. If you have a good product or service and you stick to those disciplines, you can do incredibly well. If you have a bad product or less than top quality product and you stick to those 4 disciplines, it's possible you can survive. If you have neither, then you're lost. But machine learning and artificial intelligence is within reach of all SMEs in general. For as little as $250 a month, they can take a look at what their data, and that every company has data. It's liquid gold inside most SME operations, and they don't tap it. They sit on it. I'm as guilty in the companies I have as anyone walking the face of this earth. And to be, literally, to have the curtains pulled open and to reveal exactly what I have or what we have inside our data is shocking. It really does not just open eyes, it throws you back onto the couch to determine exactly what timelines you have inside your client service or production line, or literally, what are the searches that you're lined up to take advantage of and the ones you are not, in fact, taking advantage of. There is a great deal of information available just by hooking into a tool that will allow you to see how you stack up against everybody else in your sector. And that's the power of, tapping into the cloud and looking into data, not big, just data. Taking a look at your own and then comparing it to where you sit in comparison to others. These are powerful and quick, productive tools for SMEs to be hooked up to and take advantage of. So yeah, it's not beyond reach, not at all. Every SME has a shot at becoming a more educated and driven performer in their own marketplace.
Yeah, I think that's very profound, Charlie, and a very well orchestrated answer. So why don't we go to Arslan and let's see if you can add on with the bring back the gates.
Yeah, something I was just thinking about while Charlie was speaking is, we keep talking about security and security being important when it comes to, leveraging cloud services. And, I was just thinking when we're talking security, I think a lot of people might be thinking about, all the different tools and software we're going to install on the cloud platform to secure it. But we also got to keep in mind the physical security of your data. As a business owner, especially if you're a small, mid-sized business, like the question you got to ask is, can you put a price on the valuable data that you have on your customer, any type of data that you use in your business? And what happens if you lose that data tomorrow? And that's why I wanted to sort of highlight the physical security is we still see businesses dealing with natural disaster, power outages, hardware failure, a flood. And if you don't really have your data properly backed up or stored offsite, there's a good chance you can lose it all. And we do see a lot of businesses that go under because they lose their data and they can never recover. So that's another reason to, again, leverage cloud services is the physical security of your data, making sure it's ultimately stored somewhere offsite and secure.
Arzlan, that's a great point, and one we didn't get to hear throughout the earlier conversation. You know, being able to manage data regardless, right? Not having one faulty machine crush all the things that you've got going on. So thank you for that. And David, I'm sure you could add a little bit onto that one.
I've said my piece. I'm good.
You're tapping out. All right, then I'm going to go to Dom. Dom, what do you got on top of that?
Well, I think if you take a look at what COVID taught us is that SMEs are very resilient, right? And but resilience doesn't mean sticking it out and doing the same thing you were doing before and hoping things are going to get better soon. Resilience really means pivoting and figuring out how to do things differently. And we saw that across so many different small businesses. Like sit-down restaurants, for example, went from only serving people tableside to figuring out how to put their menus online, hiring the right delivery companies, preparing that food in a manner where it stays warm and still looks delicious by the time it gets to the end user. In order for companies to pivot like that, the data piece we were speaking about earlier is essential. The insights allow you to make strategy decisions. They'll allow you to tweak and transform your organization. And it's those organizations that are willing to significantly make changes to their organization, not in the product itself, but the way they deliver that product or the way they address their customers. Those are the ones that are going to survive way beyond this pandemic.
Thanks, Dom. And, I think Eric Wan from the Analytics Lab, you could probably add a little bit on here before we close out. Yeah?
Yeah, for sure. I'll maybe talk a little bit more about the big data and marketing piece. So I think to leverage big data in the marketing sphere, it's, I guess going from more basic to more advanced. From more basic, obviously you're measuring all the steps within your marketing channels. And we've worked with a lot of organizations on marketing data. And one of the holy grail is to understand the ROI from each channel and to have a really good pulse on analytics and data of your activities, conversions, and leads coming through. So I have a good example. We have a client that we built a sort of everything from data collection to analyzing their data to reporting to an optimization model that allows us to actually keep a day-to-day pulse on their market sub-market. So we know everything from, okay, how many leads are you going to get this day to how many conversions are you going to get? And with that, we were able to say, okay, if there was a trend of decreasing number of leads through the past few days, we're able to make micro adjustments and understand true levers of what drives the outcome for their marketing activities. So we're able to affect things like pricing, incentives, marketing spend, and promotions and things like that. And I think ultimately, if I could leave with one thing, is just organizations for me is all about driving for excellence and driving for intelligence. And if your focus is on that and you keep making micro adjustments to make yourself better little by little bit every day, then it's gonna help you be successful.
Well, I think Eric, that's great. And everyone wants to be successful, and certainly cloud security, big data all come together. And so what better way before we get to Q&A than to bookend this with Eric Gales from AWS. Do you have any closing thoughts on this last question?
Yeah, I'm just going to say the same thing I say to pretty much every senior exec I meet, which is the only sustainable competitive advantage is innovation. And I see that across every industry I work in. If you look at some of the most disruptive companies right now, they have something in common. They're using the cloud because it's a great leveler. It makes available an amazing array of capabilities. I think Charlie said it well. There's just some amazing opportunities for SMEs to take advantage of cloud. And if you're not doing that, then you're really missing an opportunity to innovate, and innovation is the lifeblood of every company over time. So I would encourage everybody to, if you're not using the cloud, then there's something there for you. But your starting point may be different, but often, whatever your starting point, some of these other values will come with it. So whether you're focused on agility or cost savings or going global, then as you take advantage of cloud, then typically those other capabilities come to bear, regardless of your starting point. So I'd encourage everybody to explore how the cloud can help their business.
Eric, I think that's great. And going on to driving excellence, intelligence, and innovation, these are core foundations of every company. Everyone wants to innovate. Everyone wants to drive their business forward. And so I think I want to personally thank you all, the panel here, the esteemed colleagues that we've assembled to share their knowledge and insights on cloud security and big data. And I think now we're going to open it up to some Q&A so we could answer your questions on how cloud technologies fit into the SME landscape and their continued relevance in this post-COVID environment that we're all working on. So why don't we open it up?
And so
don't be shy now.
My apologies. A question that did come up that I wanted to, now you guys touched on this, but it was repeated because I think the person who asked the question didn't hear this response, but you folks certainly touched on it. It was in regards to small businesses adopting new technology, but specifically with creating efficiencies with remote workers. What tool or tools would you suggest that not only enable remote workers, but for those who are working remotely, how do you generate efficiencies in delivering that?
I could take a stab at that one. So if you contrast the environment where you work in an office, where you've got lightning fast network speed, a dedicated desk, sometimes a couple of displays, at least an external display, dedicated keyboard, mouse, comfortable chair, etc., and you contrast that to what some people are experiencing at home, they're sometimes working at their kitchen table, a small device, usually with the built-in keyboard, maybe a 13-inch screen. They're sharing, as Steve is doing right now, their bandwidth with children or other people in the household working. There's a difference. As much as we like to say, hey, this is great, people are working from anywhere, there is a difference in the two experiences. And I think one way to really increase efficiencies is do what we can to emulate that work effectiveness at home. For example, try to get a dedicated space if you can. And I know that's not always possible, but at the very least, have a chair that's comfortable. Spend some money on chairs. You're on it for 8 hours a day. A desk that lifts up. I've got one here where I can lift this up. I've got two displays. Two displays, by the way, gives you 17% increase in productivity. So again, there's some more effectiveness. Providing people with dedicated keyboard, mouse, even speakerphones that don't cut in and out and do some noise cancellation. These are the type of things, again, all around, how do you emulate that work atmosphere at home? There's some advantages of being at home. I don't have guitars in my background at the office, so you don't want it to look exactly like your office look. However, the experience itself, from a productivity standpoint, is superior in an office environment, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Just a thought. If I might chip in quickly as well, there's no question that you need to find a way to minimize distraction, for sure. But if you go nowadays, I think everyone's moving towards the concept of a mobile business where they need to understand that no matter what happens in the next 2 or 3 years, there will be an element of this going forward everywhere. And if you don't have a good ERP of some sort built to literally keep your team connected so they know what's going on, there are many, in every operation, there are many shared or common executables, whether it's your marketing, whether it's your CRM, whether it's your your billing. All those things need to be in one place so everyone's still aware of what's going on. They can log in and see it on their phone or their tablet or their screen. It's most important. one of the elements that people keep talking about is this, well, we don't have any water cooler time, which is that time before a meeting, after a meeting, and in a coffee room. That is facilitatable online with a good ERP. We've got one built specifically for SMEs where you pick up your phone and the minute you have good news, you just touch on one little button and it broadcasts to everybody else on the team. When you come up against a learning environment or learning opportunity or a challenge opportunity, you can share that quickly and instantly and people will respond. But it's your face, it's your voice, it's your eyes. It's not the typed screen. That is distancing. The idea of having your face, your voice, your eyes there for people to see and witness as quickly, as easily as they did when they were walking from their workstation down to grab that coffee or water. That really is an important element. There are ways to facilitate that are not expensive at all.
Yeah.
And that, most of us just don't look around for.
And just to mention, in the exhibitor hall right now, Spire is a company that enables that type of interaction. So I want to jump back to Dom for a quick second. 17% increase in productivity with a second monitor. I'm getting 4 now. Let's see how I do. And but the point is there, right? Is like, get the tools that you need. So that's one thing. And Charlie, when you talk about that water cooler time, we've heard a tremendous amount of creating community while you are distance, and being able to do that through the water cooler is just a fantastic concept, right? Like, why not be able to activate the ERP solution that you mentioned, or Spire's technology? And again, please visit them in the virtual trade show floor. Another thought that is kind of vanilla in its questioning, what key advice when it comes to small businesses for tech? Okay, that's kind of vanilla. It's kind of what this panel has been orchestrated and put together to design. But being present, how much does that mean? And I'm not picking on Steve and Eric Gales at all. That's not what it is. How important is it to actually have, and folks, again, this is not a knock on Stephen or Eric at all. There are other reasons why their cameras are off, right? To actually be present and have your cameras on. Do you guys find value in that? Or does that impact productivity or create distance when the camera is on or off? Have you guys delved into that at all?
I think it's a great question. Initially when everyone started working from home, especially in our organization, we're promoting people to use video more often because it helps build a certain level of relationship and keep the momentum going. But as time goes by, you also start to feel that people are really feeling the Zoom fatigue, for example, and it does get exhausting. So there's definitely a lot of best practices that can be implemented. It doesn't necessarily require you to invest in tools or products. You can do little things like, try scheduling shorter meetings. Like, do you really need an hour every time you schedule a meeting, or can you even get by with 15 minutes? If you need 15 minutes, then book 15 minutes. Or I was reading through a KPMG study a couple of weeks ago, and they have implemented some really interesting company-wide policies like video-free Fridays, where people don't feel obligated to be on video on Fridays, and it allows them to just leverage voice calls. Or heads down time, where you block out a certain amount of time within your calendar, whether it's for lunch or whether it's for focus time to catch up with emails or whatever else it is. But certain little things like that too can actually have a huge impact on ultimately making sure that you don't burn out and you still remain productive with your day to day.
That's fantastic. And just before I get to Eric Huang, Chris, you have some thoughts?
It's like being in a classroom again, right? But only virtually, raising the hand. Yeah, Arslan, I think bang on there. And as we've gone through COVID, I think we can all recognize this. We had time in our day to work smart and work hard. There was always that balance. And as we got used to COVID, all of a sudden our calendars started to get busier and busier and busier and busier. And I think it's on us, business owners, leaders, employees, to be able to balance our time and focus on productivity. Productivity doesn't mean being busy. Productivity doesn't mean multitasking. So you have to focus on impact. Just because we're sitting at the desk does not mean I need to be available. And I think we have to look at that. If we're running a business, how are we servicing our customers? And if we're not focusing on the value of that service, I think we're doing a disservice. And it's on us now to learn how we exit COVID and how to work in a hybrid environment.
Fantastic. Now, when you mean exit COVID, I'm going to bridge what you're saying and throw it over to Eric Huang, and then we'll get to Eric Gales and then David. But Eric, when he means exiting, what thoughts can you share or lend to this conversation from a technology adoption perspective to not necessarily fast forward, but certainly grease the path towards that exit?
Ooh, that's a tough question. So I think there's a lot of talks about the post-pandemic recovery. I'm of an economics background, so I read a lot into this type of stuff. I think depends. There's three types of businesses scenarios during COVID. There's one that's struggling, one's doing okay, and one's doing really, really well because of COVID. And I mean, in any situation, I'm sure there's those three types. But as we come out of it, I think the organization that was struggling really need to focus on sort of preserving their capital and think about how they want to kind of keep surviving. But also, I think for the one that's doing really well, to think about how they want to think about the different scenarios I think that might happen with the post-pandemic recovery, right? So there's multiple scenarios. We could potentially have a fourth wave. We don't really know. I mean, knock on wood, I hope not, but it's possible. We could have, things that's flat, or we could have a really, really big boom, depending on what business you're in. So I think even just having a plan to think about, okay, what are those three scenarios and how are we going to act with those three different scenarios, I think would be really important. And maybe to think about this in a more analytical way, we can associate probability for each one of those and trying to plan for an analytical way as well.
That's a powerful response, and thank you. I knew I asked the right person for that answer. Create scenarios and don't just wonder what could potentially happen. Create scenarios and see how they play out, and then plan for each of those scenarios, and then see what technology can help you best if that scenario plans out. I knew I asked the right person. Thank you so much. I wasn't nervous challenging you with a hard question either. Now, David, Eric Gales, both of you, from what I understand, manage teams. What is it about technology that you are eager to get rid of? You know what? You just can't wait till your team stops being dependent on this. And what are you eager also to have more of? Bring it on. Give us more of this in the way that you manage your teams.
I think one of the things that's been interesting through this whole sort of COVID era is obviously everyone was forced into a situation of working remotely and working remotely from your customers. And one of the things that's been interesting is there are some things that actually in this new work entirely digitally, work remotely, that have surprised us, have worked better. And so, for example, historically, we have a training team that goes out and trains customers face-to-face. Historically, obviously that all moved to digital. We set them up with studios at home so they could project their training from home to their customers as a stopgap during COVID. It actually turns out that our customers are more satisfied with that. Our trainers can be more productive because they're not traveling around the country, they're happier. And so there are some things that will likely endure that we initially just sort of put in place as a stopgap measure so we could continue working. And then there are some other things that we've worked, don't work so well. We've sort of determined that trying to brainstorm, virtually with a team, that's tough. Those things are much better in a room. Yeah. We're looking forward to, and we've tried, we've got lots of tools that we've tried to support that, but we're looking forward to sort of getting back to a room. So I think we've been able to sort of determine through this sort of forced environment, what things that we will endure in sort of post-COVID model. And then the same thing with customers, the interactions with customers, how they've prepared to work, again, because we were putting them into situations where they would have to perhaps spend more time because they were traveling, versus now they can do it virtually. And so, we certainly anticipate that there will be some things that from this forced period we'll continue to do, and that will become the norm for us. And then other things which we really sort of expose that these things work way better in person, that we're keen to get back to as soon as we can.
Gotcha. And I got to tell you, I'm really trying to concentrate and listen to your response, but I'm so distracted by that charcoal grill behind you on the deck, buddy. It's getting about that hour, so we're going to begin to wrap up. But David, certainly want to give you an opportunity to respond about when you're managing your teams as well. What are things you want to excise and you consider excess, or hey, a little bit more of that?
Yeah, I concur with Eric and his experience, which is very similar to what we've had, which is to say that we were pretty much forced to innovate when all of a sudden your typical processes were brought to a halt. And that forceful innovation actually yielded some very interesting results, where the things that we used to think had to be done with travel, had to be done on site, had to be done face to face, we suddenly realized they don't need to be done. They can be done with a little bit of prep work, a little bit of workflow, and then now you can actually be way more optimized. So we're not going to go back to the old system, even when all travel is lifted and we're able to travel. On the flip side, we had the exact same experience that when you don't end up with that head-to-head, knee-to-knee, heart-to-heart, as Charlie refers to it as, you really lack that in-person energy that you can get from leaders or that you can pass on if you're a leader. It's very, very difficult to do that remotely. In fact, it's almost impossible. And so the best we can do is have like a totally optimized setup for working remotely. And the reason I don't like wearing headphones is because that traps me, right? And the reason I have a proper microphone is because I prefer you to hear me when I speak instead of it coming through muffled. No offense, Steve, it's probably to do with your internet connection today, right? So these are things that we've learned in the process. We're going to take the best with us and keep doing that even better, and then go back to the things where in-person presence really does matter.
Thank you. And we're going to wrap up now. I'm going to give Stephen the last word, but isn't that fascinating? We're here about a conversation about adopting technology, and yet we're not throwing out the human touch, the human connection, because it will always matter. So we really appreciate, bringing it to a certain level of brevity where we understand, hey, we're not trying to replace touch, human connection. So thank you for making sure that was a part of the conversation. And to Bobby Flay's, if you ever watch the Food Network, twin brother, Stephen Call. Am I the only one that thinks that he looks like Bobby Flay from the Food Network? I mean, I'm sure he's heard a little bit, Dom, a little bit. The rest of you have to start watching the Food Network. All right. Stephen, thank you so much for orchestrating this time and this session. We really appreciate you and your effort. Any last words? And then if you could, and then, one of us will certainly wrap up the session. And again, thank you folks for taking the time to be with us. Thank you for lending us your ear and making this opportunity possible. Stephen, go for it.
Well, I'd say if I could beat Bobby Flay, that would be great, right? Because those contests, he always loses with baking. Too bad I'm not a baker. I focus too much on technology. But listen, thank you so much. I mean, it's really been an honor to be a part of this panel today, to talk about something so important, so critical, so transformative in businesses today. And, to quote Charlie earlier, SMEs, this is not unattainable. This is very cost affordable. This is very secure. This allows you to drive better insights in your business by leveraging cloud security and big data in new and transformative ways. I think you've heard from experts across this panel, and thank you very much, panelists, for sharing your insights, sharing your stories, and how you've brought businesses forward in this pandemic, and for tolerating my internet connections while my daughter's playing Fortnite, watching YouTube, and pretending to go to school. Although, I guess school is over now. That's why my bandwidth is working again. I want to thank Canadian SME for bringing us all together, to giving us this opportunity to talk about this very critical, exciting area that's going on right now. And, I'm glad that Samsung is a supporter of Canadian SME and all the great things that you do in business today, and supporting SMEs grow and foster and learn from opportunities like this panel today. So thank you very much. Thank you for having me. and very glad to be a part of this event. Thank you.
Thank you again, everyone.
you.
And I'm going to take some liberties here. I'm just going to ask everyone to turn their cameras off as we wrap up, but stay on with us if you certainly can. That'd be appreciated. Look, folks, the reason why I'm asking them to turn their cameras off so you can see their names. All these folks are very approachable, and I'm going to take some liberties. If there was somebody in particular that you wanted to follow up with, hit them up on LinkedIn. If you're nice enough, who knows, you might make another connection, because that's another reason why we exist, is to make more connections with leaders such as the folks on this call and those who are thought leaders as well, with every small and medium-sized business out there. So again, if it was Ursulan or David or Charlie, whoever it was that, if something really resonated, I would encourage you folks to certainly reach out to them. Well, it's not that we're wrapping up day one. That's not what it is, because this is a 2-day event. Today, yes, is day one, but it's not like we saved the best for tomorrow either. I will say this, the lineup that we have already laid out for tomorrow, we didn't give all of our best today. We spread it out over both days. I mean, tomorrow, one of the most brilliant men that I've met and heard speak, his name is James Meddings. He's the president of FedDev Ontario, and he will be giving us a powerful keynote. Powerful, why? Because it makes sense, it's relevant, and it's connected to your day-to-day business life. We'll also be hearing from Eric Fletcher, the vice president and marketing and communications of Rico, one of Ursulan's buddies, right? So we're certainly going to be able to hear from other, we have a tremendous lineup. There is a panel happening. We're going to kick it off at 10:15-ish. There is this handsome guy with a black blazer who might be moderating it. You might not want to miss that. And of course, the day will be chock full of other panels and great insight. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. If you go back to the main conference site there, you'll see all the links ready for tomorrow. Rest up, enjoy your night, and we will see. And we'll see you tomorrow. And of course, see all these folks behind me, all the names here that have made this event happen. Thank you as well. And thank you to all of our exhibitors. Folks, the exhibitor floor is still open for a little bit. So if you want to, feel free, go and visit them, hang out with them, ask them more questions, and ask them for a coffee mug as well. Who knows what swag that they might have. Have a great night, everyone.